My name is Amra Khan, and I am a 2024 artist resident at the Sam & Adele Golden Foundation for the Arts. My work basically looks at the queer and the alpha male archetypes in the Pakistani community, how the idea of masculinity exists and how it's imposed onto boys or women as well that are raising them. There's an expectation for each individual to be a specific way, physically, mentally. I lived in Lahore all my life, so there's this influence that has come from there. So most of my references are people I've met, objects I own, objects I see in a museum, things that I hold close, or conversations that I've had. This object has started coming into my work, which we call the surmadani. A surmadani is a jar for kohol that you fill it up with kohol and then you apply it in your eye. What's interesting is that it's the only form of makeup that is allowed for men. And that's why this becomes kind of like a symbol, that middle ground between the very masculine and the feminine, because you'll see the very masculine men also wearing them. So the frames are there because you see all these gorgeous gilded frames and these posh people being represented in the best way that they can. The others, the sidelined people that are never really placed in a beautiful gilded frame. Did an entire series of painted portraits but gilded frames. This work representing the queer or the female body wearing the turban. So this is the first time that I've used my own self. This specific turban represents class and culture and masculinity and being the alpha male above all. So making it pink and shiny makes it feminine of sorts. I'm an artist that also teaches. I enjoyed the part where I was on this side of learning, and I really wanted that. I loved the fact that I was constantly guided every time I asked questions and nothing was held back. That really helped in experimenting more. There are things that I had planned, I'm gonna do this here, and I've completely abandoned and tried out whatever materials and objects or surfaces and things that I could from here. And that has helped me in just simply as letting go, because you kind of become a little rigid in a practice as well. And it's really hard to break away from that sometimes. And that is what's had happened for me, and I appreciate that more.
My name is David Najib Kasir, and I am a 2024 artist resident at the Sam & Adele Golden Foundation for the Arts. I was born here in Chicago, but my family and I, we lived in Syria. Syria has had a huge impact on me. When the Civil War started, as a direct effect of what America did in Iraq, there was this sort of perfect storm of chaos that moved into Syria. At that time, I was furious about it, so I was trying to use my platform in a way to grow awareness and get people to care. Just do whatever I can. When I first started working on this series, I would not paint features of the figures because I figured if I made them look Arab, that majority of Americans would have this view of being very dismissive towards them and not care whatever pain or suffering that they were going through. Since then, I've grown to throw that out the window and force it into your eyes of who these people are a little bit more dramatically in the last couple months because of what was happening in Palestine. The horrors and the death toll of children and civilians. This mother over here just saw the body of her child who's been deceased, and there's a figure trying to keep her together. But I want you to see her grieving face. I want you to see that moment, almost imprisoned in these lines that contain her, and that sort of cultural moment that's keeping her together. This piece is a moment of a girl who's just heard a bomb go off nearby. This is a figure of a grandmother. You know, you could see it in her eyes, all the harm and chaos that she was looking at. I didn't know how much of those eyes I would be able to keep because of where she fits into the painting. It's a strange thing because like some of these areas, they're painted to detail to some degree, but then when you remove the tape, it's like, oh man, I really like that area that's now on tape, that's in the trash. They're just sort of like missing beauty of who they are that ends up in the garbage. They're not all there. They're missing. And I'm sorry. Part of the reason why I do these pieces is because I get emotionally invested. If I'm just painting them just to get a reaction, that's not honest. I paint them because I'm reacting to them. I understand them. I remember an instructor, Fahime, taking a look at my work. I remember she cried looking at the work. And that was the first time I was just like, oh, I could get that sort of feeling from somebody. You know, it really meant something to me. It felt like a superpower. As a oil painter, my favorite part of it was going through the factory. I loved that. I thought at one point I was gonna jump into just a pool of paint and you'd have to get the Oompa Loompas to drag me out and sing a song or something like that. Part of the reason why I was excited to do this is it's like, I love talking about what we do. I love talking about technique, talking about ideas and how I got from here to there. For people like myself and other painters, there's a science to it. How I mix colors, there's a science to how I get certain things working. And going into that factory, I'm seeing all scientists. I don't know if they think of themselves that way, but I see all these scientists working, putting these formulas together, making these colors work.
My name is Preetika Rajgariah, and I'm a 2024 artist in residence at the Sam and Adele Golden Foundation for the Arts. I was born in India, in New Delhi. I immigrated here at the age of 4. I grew up in suburban Houston. I was like one of 4 South Asian kids. I grew up in spaces that I felt really othered in, kind of no matter what. And so I think my practice as an artist has been coming back to myself, truly, because I've always felt like I wasn't myself, or I was performing. So then the element of performance also shows up in the work. I make self-portraits on yoga mats. There's many different reasons for the materiality and how it all comes together. I had just used yoga mats in a performance and collected almost 100 mats where I had activated them with my body, and then COVID happened a few months later. It was this collision of timing where I was like, oh, well, I'm in the house. I don't have access to other people. I have access to myself and all these mats. Then it just became me playing around in the studio and hybridizing these images together of places and spaces and memory. You know, in a yoga class when they say like, leave it all on the mat, I literally think about it as the site for me to process my thoughts and my feelings and my healing, which kind of goes in line with the practice of yoga too. When I arrived at Golden, I just fell in love with this light moment through the curtains and with the rug, and I just knew that had to be my first painting here. And because it's a scale that is always of life or larger, that's important too, because it has to take up space. I feel like as a woman in the South Asian community, where we grow up being told like to not take up space all the time, I want to do the opposite in my work. Like, no, I'm going to take up space in all the gamut of ways. So I typically collage my figures with fabric from my mom. I've been collecting sari fabric or fabric from her clothing for many years now. I grew up surrounded by so much pattern and color that I never thought twice about it. It's almost a way of feeling at home in the work materially. Within the first few days, I came across this striking shadow in the foyer. I was like, well, what a perfect moment for me to put into a painting. And then the imagery is, of course, of like a white picket fence. I really want to play with that because that's a whole mood for a woman, especially for where I've been in my life and where I am right now. These are yoga blocks, and I use them in my practice at home as ways to support my body. I started thinking about them as sculptural elements and also surfaces, like 6 surfaces to work on. They're like snapshots of memories to me. It's been really amazing to work with other artists that occupy different marginalizations as you, but are also kind of speaking the same language. So it's been really great to share in conversation that is nuanced from 3 different kinds of minority experiences. It's nice when you're around the energy of other artists that are also making seriously from sunup to sundown. When my whole job is to be in studio, it's a dream.